It looks like everything's up. I'm gonna get the an audio check on YouTube. We're Everything sounds good on D Live. Okay, everything sounds good on YouTube. Getting it on the playlist, and we should I should be able to get the thumbnail, no problem. Yeah, well, I can get that later on.
Mic
Yeah.
work.
Hello, Sonia. I was wondering if you was going to be able to get in here or
I had to
not.
figure out my mic again,
Oh
but
yeah,
it's working. So yay!
awesome. Okay, so we were sounding good on everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then I'm going to do an introduction. I'll introduce you, and then we'll get going from there. I'll also introduce Sonia being on the panel and stuff. So we'll have it all professional, so that I'll edit it out, send it to you, and you'll get a copy of it. Okay. Okay. Can you guys hear me? I noticed you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yep.
So okay. Let me go ahead and do this, and we will get started. 3, 2, 1. Now, hello everybody, and welcome to WoW Talk. WoW Talk. I'm Roger Hanson. I will be your host for today. Today a very we have a very special guest with us. This is Jehan Sattaur. I'm going to be interviewing him with Sonia Galactic. Now, Jehan is a hypnotherapist, and I've had the privilege of having a few conversations with him. So we started talking, and me, him, and Sonia decided, hey, let's do an interview. So we got this started up, and we're going to get to the interview. As well as Jehan and me being here, we also have Sonia Galactic, who's with us tonight. So welcome,
Hi.
both of you. And with that being said, I'm gonna turn this over to you, Jehan, for a while, so you can give everybody a little bit of information about your background, and we'll start from there.
Okay, it's like a pretty broad question there. Um, I like to think of myself as a hypnotherapist that helps a lot of people. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people out there that would be interested in hearing more about how I do that. I've been doing this for about 10 years, nonstop. I think probably driven by some deep need not to fix people, but to figure out why everybody around me is so mentally screwed. That's the best way to put it. I think that one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves, and if we want to see a better world, is to actually get to the root cause of self sabotaging behaviors and to understand that the majority of stuff that we believe is probably self sabotaging as well. So, apart from that, I do a lot of work with anxiety, depression, um, cessation of smoking, alcohol, drug use, weight loss. I also have certification in nutrition and cognitive behavioral therapy because that helps. And I'm basically doing all of that coming out of a music back career musician for a very long time since I was a teenager, and never really knew much else except for that. But it was kind of the soil that I got planted in and grew, and eventually I needed to be in a bigger pot, so to speak. So I got out of music because of the way that things were in the industry, and decided to go after psychology. And I had already studied psychology at the University of the West Indies, which didn't go as planned because I think I started to wake up to the psychological operation that was conventional schooling, and also started to understand that the way in the cult of psychotherapy, as I like to call it, wasn't really geared towards healing and moving past issues. It was strictly about trying to survive the experience of being alive rather than actually thriving, you know? So I'll stop there and let you jump in.
Oh no, you started out on a great path to me. I really love that because we've had previous conversations, me and you and Sonia, and you really dive deep into this stuff. I know that you've actually got PowerPoints that you showed me and Sonia, and like these things, man, were just off the chain. Just so people who are listening knows, this guy is
Yeah.
taking time and effort into it. Yeah, Sonia, you need to say something now because
He's a
I
pro. You're a
yeah.
pro, bro.
Mhm. Build this dude's
For
ego
sure.
up because he deserves it.
No, I mean, it's not even about that. It's just about being, I know it's probably super kind
He
of
knows.
a normal thing for you, Jahan, to like have all this information and these PowerPoints. And like you were saying, people are kind of think they're boring or whatever, but that kind of stuff, I'm very interested in that kind of stuff. I think that's super duper awesome. I mean, that really says a lot for sure to
Hmm.
put so much time into something that's so boring, but yet so educational, you know?
Right.
hmm
Well, I mean, and just so I can add to that too, like when she started,
Well, I lost you after the first time you said PowerPoints.
oh, I probably said that wrong. PowerPoints, points, kind of like,
That was right.
was it it?
PowerPoints is right. Yeah.
PowerPoints, yeah. You had a whole, you had a whole illustration of your work and stuff. That's amazing.
Impressive
That's
for sure.
really, and
Yes.
when when uh when Sonia was talking to you, she just reached out to me. She says, "Man, you got to meet this guy. You got to meet this guy." You know what I mean? Because I'd already been kind of dabbing into a lot of these subjects, and when we started talking, you started saying all the right stuff that I was really interested in. So, just wanted to say that. Um,
All the right stuff.
right.
But yeah, I was just pointing out how serious, obviously, you are in your profession to make such wonderful, boring PowerPoints, and
Right.
and to have all this information that most folks kind of would think is boring. Which me and Roger, obviously, we love that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
here we are.
Right.
Yep.
No.
Right. Well, typically I don't use PowerPoints. I usually just speak from the top of my head, but those
hmm
PowerPoints I showed you was actually from a presentation that I had to give that required me to have slides and stuff. And doesn't even really do justice to the wealth of knowledge that I have in my head.
hmm
So it's actually harder to speak with the PowerPoints than it is to actually just go right off the top of my head, you know?
Okay.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, if you want, I can start you out in something that really first started getting me curious and see what your perspective is on this.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. With you, what do you feel is the difference between being mesmerized and hypnotized? First off.
First of all, when you say mesmerized, you're just really referring to Anton Mesmer and his version of hypnotherapy, which is the stereotypical you are getting very sleepy and you're swinging a watch in front of someone. So being mesmerized is all about having a narrowing of focus, which essentially is almost the same thing as trance induction, but it's a very light state of trance. So here are the things that narrow focus: screens, events that are potentially traumatizing or stressful, things like waiting for the bus, anticipating when your loved one or your child is going to get home, different things like that. And so that kind of moves into the second part of your question, is what exactly is hypnosis? And hypnosis is any change in state away from your normal logical thinking and talking state. And it varies to different degrees after that, um, in terms of brain wave cycles per second. Essentially, scientifically, that's what it comes down to. But hypnosis can happen at any time during the day. Actually, I jokingly say that you would have a series of mini strokes if your brain didn't transition into alpha, because the subconscious mind is taking in trillions of bits of information compared to the conscious mind, which is just 140. So you have to have time throughout the day to process it, and usually within a 7 hour or more time frame throughout the day, and you don't even realize that it's happening. That's how subtle hypnosis is. Um, you could be listening to me speaking right now and actually be in a light alpha state simply because you're paying attention to what I'm saying. So therefore, I've narrowed your focus down to just what I'm saying, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So if anybody asked me what is hypnosis, they would actually have to change that question and ask me what isn't hypnosis. And it's a very short list of things.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. That actually is pretty interesting because I that's kind of what I was getting into when you were talking about alpha waves. Now, like one thing that I really started getting more curious about was sleep. When it comes to people and their sleep habits and the waves, like the theta waves, you have the alpha waves and stuff of that nature. Um, uh, I always found, or what I've been finding, is there's a correlation between these waves and like the phases of sleep that you go through in the night. You know what I mean? Like you have REM, then you have deep sleep and things of that nature. Have you done any kind of research into that? No. Do you know much about that?
I know a lot about it, but the things that I do know actually would not be very relevant to mental health during the waking state, if that makes sense. Um, as it pertains to hypnosis, you're very suggestible when you're actually asleep, because what's called the critical faculty, which is just a fancy name that's given to the doorway between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, is wide open. And so you're transitioning through into the deepest level of cycles per second. I forget the exact number right now, but it's kind of like being a baby. You come into the world, your subconscious is wide open. Any information that you're given is received as truth. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing to debunk it or deny it. And there's so much information coming in that even if you could wake up and think about it, you wouldn't be able to track it all. You wouldn't be able to analyze it or anything. So you're really mostly taking that in through your auditory faculty, because obviously your eyes are closed and you're not
Mm-hmm.
taking in much of anything else. That's the reason why you could be asleep, smell smoke, and dream that your house burned down, for example, because you would just be responding to your senses purely alone, and your brain will fill in the gaps with any information that's already in there. But if you are members of the cult of global disempowerment that are trying to kill us, then you're probably going to love that people are asleep because they can transmit things in directly into your brain using these waves. They can
Mhm.
log into your brain while you sleep, actually.
Yep.
So
Sleep
I can
programming.
go that route if you want to.
I
Yeah,
think
go
that's
ahead.
very interesting.
Yeah, bring it up.
Sure.
A lot of this,
Go for it.
yeah. So a lot of this stuff is like you got to think about, like you said, the REM sleep and non-REM sleep, which are characterized by distinct patterns of neural activity. So REM sleep, in particular, as you know, is associated with vivid dreams and memory consolidation and emotional processing. And non-REM sleep is all about deep restoration, um, with something called synaptic pruning, which is just a part of your system maintenance. Your brain needs to do those things so you don't short circuit, so you remember things well, so your brain stays healthy. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like that process that I described as well, the 7 hours throughout the day where your subconscious mind is helping to process things and your brain needs to go into that alpha state. But it's perfect because it's been studied using fMRI and magnetoencephalography and things like that.
Wow.
And they've developed these technologies through that, um, basically by comparing how the brain is much like a computer but so much more advanced. So they've been able to make distinctions between that, and that's how companies like Neuralink and Kernel and CTRL, are able to develop these invasive and actually non-invasive technologies that they can read your neural activity from a distance. And they can
Mhm.
actually translate brain signals into digital data. And it's kind of like Sonia. I remember when you were talking about the. I think we were talking about Alistair Crowley as Joe Rogan or something like that, and I was
Yeah.
kind of very hilariously debunking it.
Hmm.
And um, the transfer of consciousness is possible through these experiments that they've been doing for all this time. So
Hmm.
they've learned how to link prosthetics to your brain and computers to your brain and virtual reality environments doing these experiments, right? Um, they're using, like, so these waves, they all oscillate, which waves tend to do. And it's through that natural movement that they can use sensors and stuff to kind of determine what your brain waves are like, and they can sync up with that, is what I'm saying. And they
Mhm.
can transmit thoughts to you using that technology to keep it simple. So a lot of it is actually positive because they're saying that such technology could actually be used for therapeutic purposes like treating PTSD, correcting cognitive biases, enhancing learning by stimulating the memory consolidation that you have during sleep.
Mhm.
Um, but as we know, it's probably being used for worse stuff. And along with all that, you got to look at like mind control throughout history, and they've always been trying to figure out how to
Hmm.
hack into people's minds and get them to do whatever they want you to do, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So we know that MK Ultra explored mind control using drugs and hypnosis and subliminal messaging.
Hmm.
And this is kind of like MK Ultra 5.0 because they've had so much time to perfect all of this. So they are using it for behavioral modification. They are using it for remote neural monitoring, and they are using it to try to develop psychotronic weaponry. So,
Right.
basically, like Cyclops from the X-Men, just zap somebody using your mind.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, they're using electromagnetic surveillance, and I think that a lot of that is being done using electromagnetic fields And they can do that because everybody's got a TV in their house or they've got a smartphone in their house.
Right.
Um, you have the neural data networks that are set up using all these idiots. I'm sorry to anybody that listens to this and they get classed as an idiot, but you're an idiot. If you own a VR headset or anything like that, you can put on your head. All of that stuff is monitoring and collecting information on you. Smart watches are collecting information on you, and the guise of wellness tracking is one
Mm-hmm.
of the biggest ways that they harvest your data
That's right.
and send feedback to their big ass neural data networks that they're using for perfecting this technology. Artificial intelligence pattern recognition is a big deal in this whole thing. So they take that raw neural data and use AI to interpret it, figure
Mm-hmm.
out how you respond to emotional states, how good your memory recall is, how good you are at solving problems effectively. And they can log into that, the record that your brain naturally keeps while you're sleeping, and take that from you. So if you fall asleep wearing your smartwatch, you're screwed.
Hmm.
Um, I think they have the technology. It hasn't been implemented yet, but the more advancement they make in mobile phone technology, the easier it will be for them to read your electromagnetic field and do the same thing if your phone is right next to you.
Yep.
So
Mm-hmm.
they can manipulate your dreams. They're experimenting with that, where they can allow subtle changes in your dreams based on what they can see. They'll be watching it on a computer screen like it's a TV show, and then they can say, okay, well, make this memory go away and change that to something else. Um, they can insert visual and auditory cues that will change your thought patterns, change the way you make decisions, change the way you respond to emotions. So they've tested all this, um, especially through the MK Ultra research, which is currently ongoing, where they're experimenting with lucid dreaming and stuff.
Hmm.
They can target certain memories and reactivate them or deactivate them as they see fit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll
I've,
stop
I've
there on that.
I've
Wow.
actually with what you're saying there, it actually takes it even to a higher level than that too, because I've been doing research when it comes to the human brain and comparing that to a lot of this modern technology they're putting out. And even with AI, I wish that was where it ended, but it doesn't, because I remember growing up with the term wetware, or not growing up really, but whenever I was in my 30s and stuff, they referred to it as wetware, where it's biological technology that they're using. They're incorporating biological uh, frameworks with computer science. And when I started learning about this stuff right here, um, I started also finding out that they're not only wanting to possibly control you, but they're also wanting to educate this technology on how to behave like humans, and how to react like we do. You know what I mean? They want to know.
Yeah.
They want that technology to know how slow wave sleep works, and different phases that you go through from childhood to adult when it comes to slow wave sleep, and how important it is to the human body. They're into that. That's what they want those machines to know. So with
Hmm.
that, I want to see what your take is on that.
Well, science fiction isn't really fiction. They've just been, not even to say like, because I don't necessarily agree with the idea of that they have to tell you what they're doing. I don't think they have to tell you what they're doing. I think it's a part of their sadistic process where they get a kick out of just saying, "Oh, I wonder what they think about this."
Right.
And if they think it's cool, then we can get them to consent to us implementing this over a short or a long period of time, depending on how they react to it, right? So
Hmm.
you think about films like Inception or The Matrix, where you have human cognition pretty much infiltrated and manipulated, or just flat out hijacked. and you think about like Philip K. Dick and all the stuff that was very within the realm of contemporary speculative fiction, and a lot of the themes are basically the loss of mental sovereignty. That's all real stuff. I think maybe he was making a comment during his time period on it that became scarily real within a very short space of time after that. But the most scary part about it is that there's a big gap in the data where all of a sudden it's gone from being conspiracy theory and foolishness to you have 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. You can find the most recent research that they've let come out on it
Mhm.
about remote wearable neuroimaging devices for mental health and sleep monitoring, and um, things from the Mayo Clinic that explain how EEGs are measuring electrical activities going in the brain, and they can tell how you're sleeping, to like targeted memory reactivation for people who have brain damage. And um, there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
UCLA has research that they're telling you about targeted deep brain stimulation, and it's supposed to be for memory consolidation, but we know it's not really just about that, because universities are essentially think tanks
Hmm.
where all of this stuff is thought up and implemented, and they always try to convince you, hey, we just did a study and it says this, when reality is that they've been experimenting for a long time and they already know exactly what they're doing. So
Hmm.
they're going to try to use, I predict within the next 10 to 12 years, they're going to try to use all of these wellness devices and VR headsets and smart TVs and smartphones as different ways to connect you to the cloud,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah.
Well, Sabrina Wallace says we're already connected to the cloud through smart dust because we're breathing it in and it passes the blood brain barrier and it's all in our brains and everywhere. It's in clothes, food, it's pretty much everywhere. So, and she brings up uh, college classes where they teach folks this, as well as tons and tons of research from even on the government websites, like the nanotechnology website and stuff. I mean, it's very, very in depth. It's going on like right now, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we've had conversations before where you really got excited about the hippocampus. And the one thing that I kept quiet when we were talking because I wanted to remain where you think I was smart and stuff. But I'm gonna go ahead and show my stupidity now, okay? Because this is something that I wanted to wait for and ask you about. Now with the hippocampus, especially when it comes to memory, learning, and stuff like that. I know that it works real close with the neocortex, and it usually works during slow wave sleep. You know, now when you were talking about the brain being able to, well, I'll just say it the way I say it. When you're asleep and you're in deep sleep, the brain is basically filing information. You know what I mean? The information that it feels that is necessary, it keeps, and the information that it feels unnecessary, it just discards. You know, and what I'm wanting to know is, do you think by any chance that there is some kind of technology that would be set up that would make it capable, or do you think it's possible where it would make it capable to where they can make you just forget on that premise alone?
They already have that technology. They've had that technology for a very long time. And They allude to it in a lot of movies and stuff. I mean, from back in the 80s, they kind of allude to it, including like Men in Black, which is that device. He presses it, it flashes the light, and you forget the moments that happened before. And they can set on a dial, you know, how much they want you to forget. If they want you to completely forget everything and be wiped, they can do that too, but it just isn't commonplace. um but I guess I have to get into it and provide context for the listeners because they weren't with us in that conversation, so they don't know what I'm talking about or what you're referencing, and they probably are also asking, if you're just a hypnotherapist, why do you know all of this? And the answer to that is, I'm a very curious person. I believe that curiosity is a form of love. I have training as well in human behavior, which leads you down a very dark path if you're actually interested in the application of it. But hypnotherapy is a process. Hypnotherapy is the science of the subconscious mind. And then, in order to answer the question, what is the subconscious mind and how does it work inside of the brain? Because that's the only thing we know that we can see and we can touch. Um, you have to go towards neuroscience. And so I've done a fair amount of working on learning about neuroscience over the years because I wanted to know, why is it that my clients were doing certain things? Why is it that I did certain things? Because the spiritual is full of garbage. You always hear the hijacked narrative that comes from the New Agers or spiritualists, and they've stolen it from psychology, hypnotherapy, and neuroscience. But, anyways,
I've got
the
something to
this
say about
conversation
that.
that we were having,
Go
say
ahead.
it.
Well, you were bringing that up, and it really reminded me of this guy. Look out for Charlie, and he studies sound waves. And he has a one point where he brings out in one of his videos about ascension symptoms and how these, the New Agers and things, talk about, being having headaches or being ill in some form or another, as that means that, oh, you're just, you're upgrading and stuff like that, when in actuality he's pointing out that it's this the technology that they have being used on the public, as opposed to, ascending kind of thing. So and it's very in depth. That's just the short and long of it, I guess. But yeah, so that kind of relates to what you were saying about that particular community, for sure.
Yeah, he's right. He's
Hmm.
completely right. But let me
Hmm.
reference the conversation. So what I was actually telling you guys about
Hmm.
is the limbic system and the pathways.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what I have made my work about, my one-to-one personal sessions with people, it's very different to what you would encounter when you go to your traditional clinical hypnotherapist office. I am seeing behavior as emotional responses. In order for me to do that, I have to look directly at the limbic system and how it is being triggered every day throughout your everyday life, whether it's how you think, believe, what you eat, what you drink. The limbic system has three pathways, and both of these pathways send and receive information that are then translated into some kind of emotion, usually negative.
Mhm.
So, what I'm saying is that the way that your pathways are interacting together will dictate your perceptions and emotions.
Wow.
And that will go on to trigger the resulting behavioral responses. So that
Hmm.
means that you are at the whim of how you've been programmed or conditioned to respond. I make a distinction between programming and conditioning specifically because B.F. Skinner tells us what conditioning is, and programming, we know, is linguistic based. So when you say a person is programmed, be careful because they might have been conditioned. They might have been in a situation where they were responding to repetitive behavior, rewards, or
Mhm.
something in their environment. And programming might be language that's repetitively used to make them think a particular way or gaslight them in a particular way. Or they've taken that, interpreted it through the filters of other experiences, and then come up with their own conclusions about life and people. So, a big part of my work is realizing that scientists sit around in labs making all these different chemicals and recalibrating old ones, like sugar, for example. Sugar is made to be even more addictive, and they do that by simply diluting it with other chemicals. So let's say, for example, now I know all about sugar because I come from the land of sugar, the land of sugar cane, the supplier of all sugar everywhere, Barbados, the sugar plantations. And the raw product that comes off of the factory line is much different to what you get in the stores because you sell that to other countries. They send those things to factories that cut those things using lime or other chemicals, and they cut it down and cut it down and cut it down and refine it until it becomes white sugar, which means they've expanded a certain amount to be extremely sweet, and they can double their profits off of the
Hmm.
original purchase, right? But
Yep.
in that process, those chemicals make that sugar far more addictive, as addictive or more addictive than cocaine, for example.
Hmm.
But that gives the system cravings that are hard to override, which affects your limbic system. So you have all these different chemicals in our environment that cause the limbic system to go nuts. And there are three pathways that I was telling you guys about. The first one is the reward pathway, and that basically uses dopamine to communicate between your ventral tegmental area and the dopamine receptors that are located in a part of the brain called the nucleus accumbens. And that causes your brain to manufacture these feelings of motivation. And along with that sense of motivation, you have a sense of reward that accompanies learning. So some people are having that particular pathway activated right now because you're having a simulated sense of feeling smarter by taking in the information that I'm saying. It's the same thing you have when you get an aha moment or you watch a YouTube or Instagram video and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just learned something. Well, you didn't really just learn something. You got hacked. That dopamine was communicating back and forth between those two parts of your brain, and you got a simulated learning experience. So this is also how you will learn what feels good: sugar, alcohol, caffeine, masturbation, shopping, you name it. Because on the secondary end of that, you're having something called EOPs, which is endogenous opioid peptides. And these are being released by clusters of similar neurons, which have the same effect in the brain as heroin or morphine. So
Wow.
that's why when you drink coffee or tea or alcohol or sugar, or you go rub one out or you watch porn or you're one of these people that has a shopping addiction, that's behind the feeling of pleasure that you get or blissfulness that you get, right? That's really what you're chasing. You're trying to activate that reward pathway. If you're a wicked person and you do bad stuff to people and you like how that feels, that's your reward pathway. So it's involved in many different applications. The second one involves happiness, and it's using serotonin to communicate between the dorsal raphe nucleus, the mouthful. That's a part of the midbrain that contains these neurons that manufacture serotonin. It's a very small percentage of serotonin, but it's powerful enough to travel to various areas of the cerebral cortex. I know I'm using a lot of big words, but that basically gives you the ability to process experiences and judge them as good or bad. So this pathway is called the contentment pathway. Now, how the serotonin actually acts in your brain differs depending on the various parts of your brain and it will give you a different cognitive outcome depending on the clusters of neurons that you as a unique individual have built throughout your life. So when people say dumb shit like it's my childhood trauma, is it that? Or did you interpret a scenario between 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, and 21 to age 30 that you're referencing that response to something else because you've built these clusters of neurons that cause you to think that particular way, that cause you to assume a particular assumption,
Mm,
that
mm-hmm.
cause you to emotionally respond in a particular way, even if you thought about it so that you didn't have a reaction. It's your contentment pathway because everybody just wants to feel joy, but the brain is hardwired for negativity. And so you have this pathway that's looking for it, that's trying to figure out how can I get out of here unscathed through
Right.
danger, right? So a lot of what you're doing is essentially trying to seek a reward through one of these pathways. The most problematic one for me is the stress, fear, memory pathway. And I believe that that was the one that we were speaking about specifically in the conversation that we had. And I'll tell you one of the most disturbing things that really caused me to get on that. When you're doing hypnotherapy and you have someone in a trance state, they're vulnerable. They will tell you anything that they have access to. And so when people say things about childhood trauma, we're conditioned and programmed, because a lot of it is language that's used, to automatically think that everything that happened to us between 0 to 7 is the reason why we behave the way that we do at 25, 35, 45, 55, etc. But from 0 to 7, we're just taking in blindly input from the outside. From 7 to 14, we are testing that information against our environment with our friends at school, with our parents, our family members, and we're trying to formulate strategies that determine how we uniquely as an individual will deal with random scenarios. And so from 14 to 21, teenagers especially can be difficult because they're testing the information from 0 to 7, 7 to 14. Their brain isn't developed, and so they're completely making decisions from their limbic system. The prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet. As a young adult, from 21 to 26 or 27 or 28, depending on your life experiences, the chemicals you put in your body, various factors, you are then struggling to close loops, test that information. And so the childhood trauma narrative suggests that you don't ever learn anything else throughout your entire life, and you don't ever have new experiences that are operating based on a reward basis.
Mhm.
So, having said all that, you're continuing to learn throughout your entire life as you reach new experiences that are not within the 0 to 7 childhood trauma phase. You then have to find references from outside of you in order to fill gaps, because consciousness cannot create independently out of nothing. It needs to replicate something that it has witnessed prior to that in order to make a decision. So, in poking around inside of people's subconscious minds, I realized that the memories and strategies that they were using in their relationships, specifically, in their health, specifically, was coming from the music and the television that they repetitively watched. There were no reference points from their childhood that you could find to track an event and say, okay, this traumatic event, which is what is trauma? Trauma is when the medial prefrontal cortex deactivates and you filter a very small amount of information from which you determine a meaning about that event and how you will then survive and continue to cope throughout the rest of your life in events that your limbic system determines are similar to that. I hope that wasn't hard to understand.
No, actually,
But
it
It's
makes
very interesting.
good sense because like I started getting caught up in delta wave and the activities that take place from the time when you're born up until the time that you become an old person, you know. And I know that like delta waves or delta wave activity, I should say, is more dominant when you're in your infant stage. You know what I mean? Because like you said, you know, your brain is actually trying to develop. You know what I mean? And that all made really good sense to me. I really like what you said there.
I have
right, so
several
let's tie
questions.
in.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Finish up.
hang on to your questions because let
I
me
will.
finish up. So, to get to the part about the hippocampus that you were referencing, Roger, the stress fear memory pathway is made up of these four areas: the amygdala, which is the center of stress and fear, that then communicates to the hypothalamus, which is controlling hormones, including cortisol, again, more stress.
Hmm.
The hypothalamus is then talking to the sympathetic nervous system. And where is the subconscious mind? It is within the nervous system. So
Hmm.
the sympathetic nervous system is trying to determine very simply, do I need to go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn? And it tells your vagus nerve, which is a really long nerve in the stomach, all the way up the spine to the back of the brain, to stop working because now you have to prepare for an emergency. The hippocampus, then, which is the memory center, it's like a tape inside of a tape recorder. It then interprets memories as either good or bad, but everything is stored there. Events from childhood or the content from the last movie you watched, the last song that you listened to, are all stored in there for reference. So, like I said, when you have a new event and it didn't happen in childhood, then you're drawing from every movie and TV show you've ever watched. So, there are people that are out there literally living their lives because they saw it on Friends, The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, The Walking Dead, you name it,
Mm-hmm.
and they have no idea because the subconscious mind's faculty and strength over who you are and what you do is so strong that the average person wants to think that they're smarter than they are. What makes you a smart person in this world is knowing that you are a dumbass by default and that you don't know anything about anything.
See, that's why I like you,
Okay?
man. That's
And
why I like
the cabal knows this. You understand? The
Yeah.
cabal
you.
knows this, and they stay far away from us because they know that they have human bodies too. Even if they're a reptilian, they have human bodies too. And that default hardware is stupid, right?
Mhm.
And it's hackable. So that's why they hide in the shadows. It's not because they're afraid of us. It's because they
They
have
don't
the
want to
same
catch it.
hardware that they have to operate with, and
Mhm.
they know that mirror neurons are a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't send their children to school because mirror neurons will emulate common behavior in any environment that it's put in. And the prefrontal
That's
cortex
right.
is a part of the brain that is supposed to put a limit on your behaviors that put you in danger. That is why people will lose executive function. They won't be able to generate willpower and create healthy goals and stick to them because there's significant damage to that part of the brain because people put their children in front of the television set. I mean, even in our generations, I know that you guys are older than I am. I'm still 38. And there was nobody that stuck their face 3 inches in front of the TV set more than I did. I don't think.
Me too.
So, exactly, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you're degrading your brain function when you're exposed to this technology. So Basically, all those three pathways have been discovered by neuroscience to generate all human emotion. And because behind every behavior is a reward, in order to focus on the reasons why, the root cause to certain things that certain people do, I arrived at this strategy. I am not saying it's the right strategy, but I am saying that it exists and it is largely overlooked by the majority of mental health professionals because they were trained by the cult of psychotherapy. I usually tell a story and I'll tell that story before I let you ask questions.
Okay.
What really pissed me off was one day I had a client who came to me just for weight loss. She wanted to lose a certain number of pounds because she needed to go in for bariatric surgery. And she was trying to figure out why she couldn't get her diet going, why she couldn't stop smoking, why her relationship fell apart and she got divorced from her husband, all these different questions she had. And I looked in that woman's subconscious mind for 4 weeks and could not find any pre existing trauma. It turns out she had a great childhood and there was nothing that was coming up at all. I finally asked her, "What do you usually do when you have free time?" And I almost shit my fucking pants because she says to me, "I usually take out a pack of cigarettes, get a cup of coffee, and I sit and I watch Bridget Jones's Diary." And I said, hold the fuck on. Hit the brakes. Tell me that again. You do what?" And she's like, "I open a pack of cigarettes. I'm smoking like 2 or 3 packs a day. I drink coffee all day long. And during my free time, I sit and I watch Bridget Jones's Diary." And I said, "Every fucking day? Are you serious?" And she said, "Yeah, every day." And she was kind of like surprised that I had that reaction. So here's the problem: Bridget Jones's Diary is celebrated as a romantic comedy classic. It is still rented after 20 years for the same reason, because people think it's funny and charming. But what it is it has become this cultural artifact that reinforces certain themes, and those themes are self-doubt, social comparison, and toxic relationship patterns, which were
Right.
exactly the issues that my client was having.
So
So
interesting. Oh my gosh.
so here's the problem. They're teaching you that it's funny when you're self-critical and you mock your own weight and you mock your habits and you're laughing at yourself and others who have failures in society, who are imperfect. When you are repeatedly laughing at someone else's insecurities, it
Hmm.
begins to wire your brain in a way that self-deprecation is a coping mechanism. So you find people who have low self-esteem and they usually make self-deprecating comments about themselves and they go, "Ha ha ha ha, don't worry, I'm mentally stable, I can make these jokes, it's fine, I don't have low self-esteem." But being constantly self-critical is one of the purposes for Bridget Jones's Diary. It conditions you to think that that's acceptable or charming.
Hmm.
In her diary entries, for example, she exaggerates her focus on calories and how like she's triggered by her appearance and stuff like that, compares to other women, different things. And then also there's the theme of romantic idealization and relationship anxiety. So it's reinforcing that you're only worthy of love if you struggle for it. If you have to run someone down and change yourself or do all these extravagant things to make that person love you, basically decrease your worth
Hmm.
and worry about whether you're lovable or not. Okay? So it kind of normalizes that the idea that messy and dramatic relationships are exciting or normal. So, yeah, it's just a clusterfuck because it's
Mhm.
normalizing social pressure and perfectionism. If you don't have the right body image, if you aren't successful in your career, then you're not socially desirable as a person. So,
Mhm.
my client was having this psychological effect where watching that movie every day, in combination with the effect of the television bypassing her prefrontal cortex, going through the stress fear memory pathway and entering that directly into her hippocampus, she learned to obsess about her weight, compare herself to everyone else, which caused her to overeat. The caffeine all day long was having an effect on her brain chemistry, her brain activity, to where she was lacking self awareness of her patterns. And then she would just sit there and smoke herself into oblivion and never know any different because she then had to self soothe because that was probably the first time throughout the day that she took a deep breath was through smoking that cigarette. So, long term exposure to any media that's portraying self doubt as funny or romantic is going to create imposter syndrome, social anxiety, perfectionism, which cause viewers to subconsciously adopt self sabotaging behaviors in love, career, social life, you name it.
Mhm.
And they will never think any differently outside of that box because it's TV. It's just funny, right? Ha.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's not
screwing my
real
teeth over
kind of
fun at
thing.
all. Right.
Mhm.
So, long story short, that really, really pissed me off and it put me even more on this path of basically going through things and looking at, okay, where is this coming from? Why is it happening? And Tavistock is who's behind that. But I'll let you ask questions because time's
Yeah.
getting away, and I know Roger has to do another show after this.
Now with me, I'm going to hold off because I know Sonia's excited. She's just sitting there. I
Oh my
know
gosh, I've
she's
got
got.
lots of questions.
So you start drilling them, get them good because
Well,
there are some things I do want to bring up, but I want to do it for another interview because I
mhm.
think that this goes deeper too.
Oh, certainly that crossed my mind as well.
But
Um, well, some of my questions go back to when we first started talking, and I just took kind of messy notes. So let's see if I could make them out. I was just curious about sleep paralysis. I know you've talked to many people who are in the, I guess, I don't really want to say new age community, but many spiritual type of people, I suppose you could say, dealing with esoteric type topics or etheric type stuff. So, what is your take on sleep paralysis?
Well, first of all, let me not be completely disrespectful to the New Age community. They're good at hijacking information and repurposing it for their own good. So they do draw relevant points from parapsychology, which is where you'll find the empirical data on topics like this parapsychology, right?
mm,
Sleep paralysis is a real thing. Entities do exist, and they do have the ability to, hold you down on your bed
Hmm.
and do things to you because they're energy harvesting.
Right. Okay.
What
Thank
else would
you.
you like me to say about that?
That's kind of just that's fine. And there again, that topic can go deeper, but we can wait for another time. Let's see. Another thing was the sugar that you were talking about, and I know that in the stores, a lot of stores have something they call raw sugar. Do you think that's actually raw sugar, or is that just kind of a label they slap on it?
Unless they purchase that sugar from a plantation and then repackage it in their packaging,
Hmm.
it's not raw sugar. But
Okay.
if they do that, then it is raw sugar. You have something called demerara sugar, which is from another area in the Caribbean, which is also raw. How you can tell that your sugar is raw sugar is if it's dark brown or has bits of brown crystals in it, and the crystals are relatively big in size. That tells you that it hasn't been ground down very much and refined very much because it will decrease in size by being tossed around. It's a crystal, for Christ's sake. It'll break.
Okay.
So, um, that molasses content signals whether it's raw or not.
Okay. Now, do you think that that type of sugar is any less like poisonous than any other type of sugar? I mean, I know it's less poisonous, obviously, than white sugar, but should we even be eating any sugar?
The closer to the earth, the better time you're going to have.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
so let's say, for example, you get your hands on some nice raw Barbados sugar. It hasn't been touched. It would have gone through that crystallization process on a sheet, broken into those tiny little pieces,
Mm,
and then sent off to somewhere else to be broken down into smaller pieces. And that's the better sugar. Is it 100% healthy for you? No, it's not. But in terms of moderation, which I
right.
try not to use that word because moderation is the affirmation of the ignorant.
Mm,
It's moderation and mediocrity tend to go hand in hand because
right.
people think that you can eat a bunch of garbage and then eat 80% healthy all the time. But realistically, if you want to mitigate long-term effects on your organs, 95% of the time you need to eat healthy.
Right.
Um,
Very good.
This
Okay.
person in the chat says, I can't operate without coffee. It's a risk I'm willing to take. I will not discourage anyone using extremism to say not to drink any coffee or caffeine at all.
No.
However, within 10 minutes of drinking coffee, the brainwave activity reduces to minimal, which is responsible for that feeling of calm that many people get. Behind 45% of anxiety cases and rising, there is caffeine. Once you remove caffeine from a person's diet, anxiety goes away. Um, it's a
Wow.
hidden ingredient in chocolates, ketchups, other things because caffeine is not regulated. It
Hmm.
has been pushed on us since advertising was invented because the majority of coffee is genetically modified to be at least 200% stronger than it should be, which is the reason why our great grandparents drank coffee and didn't have any of the problems that we have. They didn't have adrenal fatigue. Coffee didn't block the absorption of nutrients when they
Hmm.
drank it, but it does now
That's right.
because it is so strong. It does not need to be that strong. The best strategy for consuming caffeine is to take a sip, wait for that lovely feeling that you get of being energized, and throw it the fuck away. That's all you need for today, folks. And you move on
Just get a
because
shot glass.
Yeah.
it's going that's the reason why you see traditionally in French regions where they drink the pure coffee that is
Espresso.
grown from non-GMO. It's usually an espresso or things like that, but it's a very, very small cup because that's all you need. And it will stay in
Interesting.
your system for 18 hours or more, depending
Wow.
on the strength of your organs, as unique to you, and it interferes with your sleep. So, like I was talking about with the sleep, if memory consolidation isn't good, it destroys your short term and long term memory and it affects everything else that you do. That's why you have those things where you've been so caffeinated and you walk into a room and you forget what the hell you were doing in the room in the first place. Things like
Yeah.
that.
I always
These
thought that
are
was skipping
real,
timelines.
yeah, these are real degenerative brain effects and they're serious. So I wouldn't discourage anyone from drinking it altogether, but I would say that with the production of something called adrenocorticotropic hormone, that is going to completely foobar your organs in your brain, it's not worth drinking it the whole day. That's just ridiculous.
Wow.
I respect the hustle. I know people have jobs and they have children, and those are difficult scenarios,
Yeah.
but limit your intake because you're trying to actually make sure you don't borrow all of tomorrow's energy because that
Mhm.
just goes on in a cycle where you then need to have the caffeine, and then
Wow.
by the time you're 50, 60 years old, you have no adrenals whatsoever, And so your body's response to stress is so screwed that you can't repair things, and you invite a lot of other illnesses into your life, even at 20 years old, 30 years old,
Hmm.
because younger generations now are just into drinking coffee or consuming caffeine and energy drinks and all that
Yeah.
synthetic,
Yeah.
right? So it's damaging. It is damaging.
Yeah. And that's actually the coffee topic leads into my next question. I used it as an example. And this goes into what you were talking about the brain and how the rewards and things work like that. And also, what about the I don't know how to put this. Like say you okay. So for example, so a person drinks a cup of what they believe is coffee, and that's a key word there is believing. So since they're believing that it's coffee, they actually feel the same way they would. It's like the placebo effect, I suppose, is what it's called, where they actually would feel the caffeine high and everything, and then once they found out maybe it wasn't coffee, actually had caffeine in it or wasn't coffee, then it would like disappear. So my question is, how does that work in the brain where just believing something causes the actual effect?
Believing makes it so. So the saying is not seeing is believing, believing is seeing.
Yep.
Beliefs cause you to manufacture consciousness, essentially. Images that are held in your mind long enough will reproduce in your environment, or you will create based on that. Anybody that's a fan of System of a Down knows who I'm talking about. I read this when I was 13 years old in a Guitar World magazine.
Sweet.
Serge Tankian, the singer of System of a Down, said very succinctly, I do not watch anything, I do not listen to anything when I am trying to create, because it will dictate exactly what I create.
Wow. Yeah.
And I worried about it for the longest time as a teenager, trying to be an up and coming musician. Why did he say that?
Hmm.
So it caused me to think about that. And I realized that originality is dependent on yourself, you, the individual, and what you have inside of you, because we live inside of self fulfilling prophecies. If a person has a dysregulated nervous system because of their caffeine intake, they are in stress and survival mode. They will create experiences, and they will see experiences because their limbic system is looking for a threat and creating threats, recreating threats. If a person has a lifetime belief statement like, I am a victim,
Hmm.
I am broken, I am abused, I am traumatized, the language
Right.
underneath the surface is, I know what it feels like to live as a victim, to
Hmm.
be broken, to be abused, to be traumatized. And you then go on to continue to recreate that experience in your life through your actions, because your subconscious mind is doing 95% of the thinking and automatic behaving for you, even when you think you are making
Right.
conscious choices.
Right. Very, 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 very
And
interesting.
if you are using a lot of sugar in your everyday, and you're drinking 10 cups of coffee every day, your brain activity is so limited that you are probably operating a 99% in the subconscious mind. And that is why your life cannot get any better. When you try to create different experiences, you cannot. There are people that are so severely affected to it.
Wow.
If you ask them to take a different route to work, they would be physically incapable of controlling taking a different left turn or a right turn to get to work because
Wow.
of it.
Wow. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. That makes sense though. That makes me want to just
And
like not drink
let me
coffee
add
for
to
3 days.
this. Well, it's like I said to you,
Right.
drink enough to wake up and then throw it down the sink.
Right.
You
Right.
don't
Yeah,
need
Finish
a
it
no,
out.
whole big cup of coffee. Or look for non-GMO sources. For example, some of us don't drink coffee. Some of us like chai tea.
Mushroom, yeah, like chai
But
mushroom type stuff.
is your chai tea GMO? Is it
Yeah,
mass produced?
exactly,
Does it
exactly.
Mhm.
come from India, from a field where it was hand picked and hand ground and put into good quality bags and not stuff that's full of different
Mm-hmm.
things that you can't get out of your body? Yeah, all of that
Right.
is to be taken into consideration.
That's right.
And I understand that if you're on a budget, shopping and buying things that are organic because that's the game. They put that stuff more expensive, right?
Mhm.
But it's worth taking a chance on yourself
It is.
because this is what I was going to say. When a person is using a chemical to get a particular reward, like energy, or they're trying to numb emotions, so they're using cocaine, they're using marijuana, and marijuana is not safe either. The majority of that is genetically modified,
Certainly.
especially in the United States.
Yeah.
Um, and not everybody can go to a bushman and get their weeds plucked straight from the plant. So that's difficult. Cannabis induced psychosis is a real thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
common. Probably about 7 out of 10 marijuana users are suffering from silent marijuana induced cannabis induced psychosis because it's GMO weed they're smoking,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You can use hemp, you can use CBD, you can use THC oil to get the desired effects if you can find good sources. But anyways, let me not get too far there because again, Roger has to go soon.
Yes.
There's something called permission giving beliefs, and it's a category of beliefs that you encounter as a therapist or anything like that, a coach, anything all the time. And a lot of people don't know what to do with it because they don't know that it's permission giving beliefs. This is what people use to justify their choices. It's the same things as addictive thinking. So anyone can research cognitive
Mm-hmm.
behavioral therapy or permission giving beliefs in substance abuse and or even addictive thinking in substance abuse, and you will
Mm-hmm.
find out that permission giving beliefs are just automatic ideas that you have in order to preserve a habit.
It's
So
like a
it's
habit.
behind
Yes.
another cup of coffee, it's behind
Mm-hmm.
another cookie, it's behind the another drink or to binge watch Netflix. They are so difficult to override because of the addictive properties of the chemicals themselves, but
Mhm.
they begin with core ideas such as if I feel or if I think something unpleasant, I should get rid of it or avoid it with
Mm-hmm.
food, drinking, drugs, caffeine, TV, music, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And the real subconscious belief behind that is I don't understand how to process unpleasant feelings. So, as a client coming to me, that would be my solution to your problem to teach you how to understand how to process your unpleasant feelings.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are walking around saying, I need to drink coffee because I just don't have the energy for it. But when in reality, they're saying, I just can't tolerate the unpleasant feelings of being a human because life is inherently difficult in all arenas. So my
Mm-hmm.
coping strategy is how can I avoid? And so there's a reason why rats are used in all scientific studies because humans or rats are fundamentally the same in their makeup. They're both what psychology calls risk aversive.
Mm-hmm.
So permission giving beliefs are things like I can't cope as others can. Or people will have an underlying belief I am needy and weak. And that is usually followed by that morning hit of caffeine, which spirals into putting too much sugar in that same cup of coffee. Or, the snack on sugary stuff. And, I need to smoke a joint. Or I need to go out and get some crack or some cocaine or some meth.
I need to go out
And
and get some crack.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
permission
Scary.
giving beliefs, hang
let
on, hang on. Permission giving beliefs also go into the category of it isn't hurting anyone. So what's the problem?
yeah.
People use that to give themselves permission to numb themselves or indulge in something bad or indulge in something that is sexually perverse or
Mhm.
depraved.
Yep.
And a lot
Right.
of people, because of the media conditioning over the years, especially from the 60s up until now, you're conditioned to believe that you're a rebel or nonconformist if you're doing something like that,
Mhm.
and it teaches you to neglect the obligations and responsibilities of being a functional human. You see how sick that is?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's well designed, if you
Now
ask me.
I have
Yeah.
15 minutes before I have to get set up and ready for the start of the next show. I do want to bring you back because there's a lot more
Oh
that
yeah.
I want to. And the one thing I think you would probably be cool with having a conversation about would be you were mentioning oscillations. And I would love to get into a conversation with you later on concerning natural oscillations that are around us, things that like govern time and like the biological phenomena that go on, like migration of birds, things of that nature. I think I'm hoping that maybe that would get you interested in having a conversation, how that relates to some of the stuff you're talking about. Because I've found a lot of that kind of correlates with the human brain and the way it functions. So finding patterns and rhythms that kind of
Wow.
are similar to it. So
Well, we could talk about that in depth, but in order to talk about it in a way that would be understandable and relevant to all and actually serve a purpose, it would be a very short conversation because in reality, the game is about how our biology reacts to external stimulation, or
Mhm.
what we put inside of our body that determines all of that stuff. So we would just be talking about um, scientific jargon. It could be a very confusing conversation. Anyways,
But yeah, well, I before I would like to have you come back at some time, but before we go, I would like for you to be able to give your socials so that everybody knows how they can contact you or get to see your shows because I know you have your own show as well. So let everybody knows how they can find you.
yes. So all you have to do is search for me on Instagram at Boundless Authenticity. I'm also on X, Boundless Authenticity. Facebook, Boundless Authenticity. Although the Facebook page is not very active, you can send a request to join my private Facebook community. There's about 1,000, maybe 1,900 people in there. And it's a great place to network and meet people of like mind and learn from others, get support if you're trying to do certain things in your life. A lot of people who have been in there also have podcasts or are experts on topics, and they'll be willing to talk to you and help you. I'm in there. I can give advice, I can give help. Well, you will get access to things that I find interesting on the internet and new episodes of Boundless Authenticity. Um, and let's see, the podcast itself, if you want to listen, is available on Spreaker. All you have to do is search for Boundless Authenticity. I'm on Spotify, but I think that's going to change soon due to the new rules that Spotify has passed. So don't get too attached to me on Spotify. I suggest following on Spreaker. It's on Apple. Some of it is on Rumble, not all of it. Very little of it is on YouTube because YouTube does not like the things that I say or that my guests say. So I think that should set you up to find the podcast. Any other questions, you can reach me at selfsabotageinfo@proton.me. And I do have a Patreon where I am going to be publishing every few weeks a lot of the information that I just spoke about, and even more that would be too controversial that it would immediately get banned by all the other platforms. So just search on Patreon, become a free member for now if you want to, and if you find the content is worth keeping, you can become a paying member if you so desire. There's different levels of access that will be implemented on there.
All right. And now it's your turn, Sonia. You got to give yours too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just galacticfire.com, TEC instead of TIC, and I do t-shirts mainly on there for now. There's a little bit of info and I started kind of doing a little bit of a blogging, but it's kind of a cross. It's kind of weird. It's not your normal stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're interested in T-shirts or anything like that, or you think I'm awesome or awful, you can hit me up on there.
Okay. And you can find us on Rumble, YouTube, D Live, Kick, as well as Twitter. I go by uh, The Wonderful World of Weirdness on YouTube, as well as on Rumble. I also have a channel that I had before I got involved with the Wonderful World of Weirdness on there called Strange Stories. If you guys want to check that out. Now, if you want to see these streams on D Live and Kick, you're going to have to look for Roger underscore Hanson. On Twitch, you can find me at Infamous 1969. And with that, I am going to say if you liked what you heard today, please like, subscribe, share, make comments in the comment section below, guys. That is so important. Just you don't even know how much that means to a content creator when they get comments in the comment section. Just say hi. You know, you don't even have to talk about the topic. Just say hello and have a conversation. So with that being said, I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to end the show. I hope you had a good day or good evening, whatever time of day it is. I know it's getting late for you, um, um, Jehan. So I'm gonna. It's getting late now over there, isn't it?
It's only 7:21 p.m., but I got a bunch
Oh,
of animals.
yeah.
I got like
Ah,
22 cats, 3 turtles,
guys can
like
feed his animals.
dogs, birds, trains, planes, airplanes, helicopters. I got
Yeah,
all this stuff I got
speedboats.
to take care of.
So
Yep.
here in about another 10 minutes, Mark Wojcicek is going to contact me to where we can start Cafe Enigma. I invite you
And me.
guys. Yeah, you're definitely going to be there. We're gonna. That's what
Yeah.
I said. Invite us.
Oh, you did. I thought you said me.
He's going to invite us to be
Ah,
on Cafe Enigma. So I'm going to end this stream, and you are welcome to come on the show too if you want to. Um, I don't know how you want to do that, but it's promising to be a pretty good show, and you are welcome to show up too, Jahan, if you wish.
All
Um,
right, just leave a link for me, and I'll pass through in
okay,
between doing chores.
okay, and with that
thanks,
being with that being said, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the panel, Sonia, and I'm going to go ahead and end the stream.